Welcome to the Startup Grind.
So anyways, again, thank you for all coming tonight. I'm going to turn this over to Colleen. And Colleen, here we go.
All right.
Awesome. I'm going to get my beer. Cool.
So how many of you have been to a Startup Grind event in the past? Raise your hand. Okay. So if you're familiar with it, everybody knows that we have a tradition here for how we want to introduce our speakers. And we want to make sure that we give everybody a warm welcome. And that tradition is that everybody needs to stand up and clap and say, welcome to Claudia Batten.
Wow. Where do you want me?
All right, you can sit right here.
Okay.
Grab my notes so I get nervous. All right, can everybody hear us okay? Yeah? All right, awesome.
Is my mic on?
Is Claudia's mic on? Adam? We're good to go? All right, perfect. Well, thank you for driving down, braving the Boulder Turnpike. I know that there's a lot of construction and all that kind of fun stuff, so we appreciate you coming. And you come and you still just look completely fabulous. So I don't know how you always do that, but I'm envious for sure. So, well, thank you. So one of the things that I think that everybody is really interested in, especially based on your background, is what had brought you from a much more traditional role related to being a lawyer and being in a much more structured sort of, fashion and make the big jump into entrepreneurism.
So is my mic working for this group, or do I just I'll use my outdoor voice, that's fine. So as Colleen was alluding to, I was a corporate attorney in New Zealand for 4 years. Ooh, that's good, right? That's working. Now I will have a voice in the morning, which is great. I was a corporate attorney in New Zealand I practiced for 4 years after graduating with an honors degree in law and a BCA and a Bachelor of Commerce in Marketing Management. I joke, classic A-type fashion, right? And kind of emerged and did that and really loved law, but there was just this point where I realized it wasn't really feeding my soul, and made this what I call a very intuitive decision that I needed to leave and move elsewhere. I tend to not do things by halves though, so instead of Kiwis, they talk about the flight of the Kiwis. Kiwis typically move to London. It's the standard path, and not to be outdone, I decided that New York would be a lot harder, and there weren't as many Kiwis there, so I decided to move to New York. So it was a super intuitive decision. Now, as I reflect back on it, I feel like what I did was make the call that I needed to get off what I refer to as the linear line. It's the classic career path that you move forward in progressive measured steps, and that I needed to get off that wasn't what I needed, and there was much more that I could do with my skills and in my life, and embraced what I fondly refer to as the squiggly line, which is one that is a path to exceptional. It's the path to creating things that haven't existed before, but it's also a bit of a roller coaster, or a lot of a roller coaster for any of you entrepreneurs in here. We have bad days after bad days after bad days. We learn pretty quickly that it's mostly about moving sideways or backwards, and we embrace those moments when we move forwards. And that's been my life since I left my law firm.
So what was the first success or failure that you sort of identify with as being, part of that squiggly line journey?
It's interesting. I've actually just been reading The Intelligent Entrepreneur, which is actually a pretty old book, and it goes through 3 Harvard Business School graduates and talks about their path. It's really hard with the people talking about, or I just ignore that?
Yeah.
Okay. And it tracks them through, this is really awesome, I'm competing with ambulances, I can do this.
It's like New York.
It's just like New York,
pretend
baby.
like you're the city. Exactly.
So I'm reading The Intelligent Entrepreneur. It is an older book, but it walks through 3 Harvard Business School entrepreneurs and their pretty incredible success stories. And it's interesting in the book, the author notes that entrepreneurs tend not to remember failures very well. It's like women in childbirth. If you remembered the pain, you wouldn't do it again. And people ask me about the failures now, and I'm like, yeah, know there were some. I know there were a lot of bad days, but I think, you know, the best one for me is like rocking into New York after 4 years at a law firm, feeling a lot of bravado and a lot of confidence, and not even being able to ride the subway. You know, it's like that was really the first step, you know, and the first kind of level of, I think, appreciation of what this new path was going to be for me. That, you know, I'd end up going the wrong way on the subways in New York, and I knew nothing about the city. You know, I'd rocked in there thinking, oh, it's all just going to be progressive, measured steps forward. You know, I'll just do the work and get the reward and move on. But, you know, I think that was my first real tangible experience of that.
I think it's interesting that you talk a little bit about being able to do that and then pick yourself up and move on, and maybe, you know, your line changes a little bit, but you continue along, you know, the path, right? And so I know that your most recent venture is Broadli, and if everybody, you know, wants to take a look at it, you can check it out. And so talk a little bit about, you know, as you're moving through, and I know that a lot of people talk about shape-shifting and pivoting and making changes along the way. So tell me a little bit about with Broadli maybe, or even Victors and Spoils, or one of your last opportunities, how you, to that point, are able to really maintain your confidence when you're not sure what you're doing exactly, right? So how does that...
I have some great... Ooh, loud.
There you go.
Now I can... Wow, that's really loud. I have some great slides. There's this wonderful slide when I talk sometimes. It says, it's something to the effect of, you know, I make decisions, you know, I embrace my path, but sometimes, you know, some days I wake up and I just think I make really, really bad decisions. You know, and there are days where you... God, is this really loud? Is this annoying? It's kind of annoying me. Okay, good, you guys are good? Yeah. I'm not someone who likes the sound of my own voice much. You know, so... There's this wonderful TEDx talk, it's one of the education series that this wonderful woman, Angela Lee Duckworth, and she talks about grit or resilience being the #1 determinant really of a child's ability to succeed. You know, it's not IQ, it's not their background, it's not, you know, how much attention their parents pay to them, it's just their ability exactly to pick yourself up again and move on at every step on the journey. And I think I have that in spades. I remember vividly being at school and girls that were smarter than me getting really bummed out when they got like an A, and I'm sitting there with a B+, and I'm like, oh, well, I'll just do better next time. You know, there's another test. There's always something else to do. And I think I learned this lesson as early as with Massive, like the first company that I was part of. When I came into the company, it was back-end peer-to-peer network integration software. I can't even believe that I can run that off. It's the most dry kind of software imaginable. And we realized that we were competing with people that we had no hope of competing with, and we were burning at a really massive rate, and we pivoted into the video game industry, which makes no sense on paper, but we saw the boom in that industry. We saw that was a good industry to target, and went into that industry with testing software. Now, even the testing software wasn't resonating with the consumer. We went in, we talked to a number of publishers, and eventually got to the point where we realized they were never going to give up testing of their video games that easily, and realized through a series of conversations that advertising was the right approach for us. And then the rest is history. Microsoft bought us after 3 years, you know, and so, you know, that was my first real experience of being an entrepreneur, and time and time again, with Broadli being a great example of that. You know, we're just in market with this app that we lovingly call Frankenstein. That's not quite doing everything we want it to do yet, but we're having these wonderful responses from the market and doing these wonderful in-person events and just seeing where it goes. And so it's kind of gone for me from expecting to show up every day and know exactly what I'm doing and exactly how the day will go, to just embracing the squiggle and just every day like, well, we'll see what happens today and where I need to take the company. It's, you know, I guess I fully endorse that methodology now.
How do you work with your network along that squiggly line? So, you know, you used to be in advertising, and then, you know, you went and you worked at Microsoft for a little while, and now, you know, you need to be able to tell this story of the connected network related to Broadli. I mean, how do you work with other entrepreneurs and investors and colleagues, you know, in terms of people that you want to be part of that company? Like, when you're pivoting and having to change along the way? I mean, what are some of the skills that you've gained and been able to accomplish sort of to encourage that?
Yeah, it's really interesting how, when you just, I mean, for me, I just kind of blindly follow my path, and then I look back and I see all of this connective tissue, which is like, oh wow, there was some method there. I just thought I was turning up every day and creating opportunities and following them. And I have jumped industry a number of times, but I'm still connected with a lot of the people I was at my law firm with, a lot of the folks from Massive, a lot of the folks from Victors and Spoils, a lot of my clients through all of that, and then other random strays that I seem to pick up. And I love that. And there were so many inspirations for Broadli, but one of the big ones for me was the fact that when you create these trusted relationships with people, they naturally want to help you when you need help, just as you naturally want to help them when they need help. And so really that connective tissue for me has just been that I've always done everything I can, gone out of my way to help other people when they need help. And then I suddenly realized that when I'm just mentioning to someone that I need X, Y, and Z, they quickly put their hand up and open up these phenomenal networks to me that I A, never realized they had, and B, could have never expected to tap into on a more transactional cold call kind of way. So yeah, that's been the connective tissue for me through my whole career, and that's what we're trying to digitize with Broadli.
It's interesting because we talked a little bit about Broadli, and I told you that with LinkedIn contacts that I tend to sort of just accept people that I've met, right, or that I've worked with and that I have some sort of a more trusted relationship with. But I probably have, 30 people reach out to me on a regular basis, on a weekly basis. So you talked a little bit about how I should broaden that and actually start to accept some of those connections and embrace them. And can you talk a little bit more about that? I mean, you've said that you help people and that I know these chairs are terrible. So
silk pants on a steel chair.
But, talk a little bit about that concept of Broadli and how you're working to encourage some of those broader connections. Sure. And it doesn't just have to be, oh, I know you and we've had a drink and now. Yeah.
Well, I like knowing people and having drinks with people, so let's not discard that. Let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. I think, so Broadli, when we came up with the name, was all about broaden the signal, narrow the noise. We really felt that, we're digitally connected to so many people. I love that. I've built my career. I mean, that's definitely a piece that has taken me from company to company is digital connectivity. But I'm now feeling like that's magical and wonderful, but so what? Like, so what that you have so many LinkedIn contacts? So what that you have that many Facebook friends and followers and Twitter followers and blah, blah, blah. Like, what are you doing with them? How can you activate them? So we wanted to, as we say, broaden the signal, but narrow all of the noise from the connectedness that doesn't really get you anywhere. But it's really hard. I don't like pre-filtering. So if I pre-filter, like a huge basis for Broadli is when you need help, you kind of pre-filter and you might send an email to your 3 accounting friends because you need an accountant, so you're pre-filtering who might give you good accounting advice or be able to point you in the right direction, but you might miss the fact that one of the people you've been working with regularly, that their brother is like the top of their field and the exact right, area, so I'm always dealing with, New York and New Zealand and Colorado tech, so the broader your signal is, the more people you know, the more people you can ask, the more likely you are to get the answer that you need. So we also like the play on words that it's broad and there's 3 women, but that's just a lucky aside. So my philosophy on connectivity is, unless they look like a stalker or someone who's going to try and sell you real estate, then I connect in with them, and you never know. I mean, I've made some phenomenal friends by literally them when one of my really dear friends who we collaborate on a ton of things tweeted me when we launched Victors and Spoils, and I happened to follow up with him, and he's brilliant, and we have so much fun together. So I would have otherwise not responded if I was pre-filtering.
So do you find, I know that you've been obviously pretty engaged in the New Zealand entrepreneur and startup market. You've been in New York, you've been in Colorado, you're largely in Boulder and somewhat in Denver. I mean, is there a difference in that openness and that willingness to sort of support each other based on the community, or is it, think it's global?
That's a great question. I'm actually going to have to think about that one. I think I kind of reflect back to some of the stuff that Brad Feld talks about with startup communities, and I think what you see in all of those places, New Zealand definitely, and Boulder definitely. New York's just a little, I actually find New Yorkers that I know extraordinarily supportive. I've known, a lot of those people for a long time, and New Yorkers are great because we're all trying to get somewhere, but we actually, like most of the folks I know, want to help other people get somewhere. The people I know are really open to helping other people get where they're going as well. But I would say that's got less of a community feel. Boulder definitely has a wonderful community feel. There's just a heck of a lot of activity in Boulder. There's a lot of noise, lot of noise. And New Zealand, I'm in a really great place there where I'm on the board of the Ice House, which is, we call it a business growth engine for Kiwi businesses. So I get to explore that, I guess, in a slightly more managed way, from a more, operational scale level. But yeah, I think anywhere that you've got a vibrant startup community, there's a huge amount of support. It's, the thing that fascinated me is, throughout my career, I kind of noticed, because I've been in the tech industry a while now, I noticed early on people would say, how can I help you? It's like, wow, what a great question. So I tell them how they could help me. And then I noticed I would start saying it to people too, and they'd tell me how I could help them. And we always say with Broadli, we're trying to digitize the Silicon Valley, how can I help you ethos. And what I learned, kind of researching this a little bit, is that started in the beginnings of the semiconductor industry in the Silicon Valley, and they realized that they, as a community, had to help each other because nobody else was going to. So I think any smart community that's succeeding must be doing that, because otherwise, I don't think that they'd be vibrant.
It's interesting because what I've found being in Silicon Valley and coming back to Denver is that it's challenging to sort of intermix those communities. I mean, have you been able to bring community leaders from New York or from, their startup entrepreneurs and been able to sort of intertwine any of these different groups as you connected everybody?
I'm on a massive campaign right now to bring people out to New Zealand because I say we have a huge amount of ingenuity, and it's in our DNAs. We're the folks that decided to travel in ships, halfway across the world to set up life in a place we'd never been, which is a real parallel on my story, then deciding to just go to New York sight unseen. But very innovative, but we need a lot of help kind of raising the bar, raising the level of sophistication. I think about entrepreneurs as much as of our angels and our investors. So we're doing a lot of things. I've been playing around with the term of venture tourism. So I'm trying to bring people out with money to come see the phenomenal things going on in New Zealand. We kind of haven't figured out the valuation thing yet, so our valuations are kind of a little bit low, just as an extra kicker for any of you with a lot of money sitting in your pockets right now. And as I like to say, it doesn't suck to visit, so you might as well come check it out. So yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah, great.
Let's go. So, this is the Google for entrepreneurs. It's Women's Month from their perspective, and I know that the community tends to be, even in this room, there's fewer women than men. What have you experienced in terms of that concept of what an entrepreneur should look like and how being a female entrepreneur sort of factors into that view or that vision?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And there's so much I could unpack, and I'm just trying to make sure that I don't just vomit on the microphones. That wouldn't be fun for anyone. Good footage, but not fun for anyone. I do think it's different. And when I went through school, and I'm doing a great speech right now for the Australasian Girls Association schools. They want, entrepreneurs to come talk about creativity. And it's been this really interesting process of thinking back to being in school and all my experiences and realizing that and there's another female entrepreneur who's from Bulls, from Bulls, New Zealand, which is just up the road from where I'm from, Victoria Ransom, and she sold Wildfire to Google in 2012, phenomenal exit for her. And we've both talked about the fact that everywhere in our schools, when we were growing up, there was this campaign, girls can do anything. And I seriously feel like I was brainwashed by that, because I rocked into college, I went into my law firm, like I've done everything, just I can do anything, I'm a girl, I can do anything I want to do. And it's been really interesting for the first time in the last year and a half, stepping out effectively on my own as a female, trying to fundraise and trying to start companies, and suddenly meeting resistance. And it's really surprised me, and it's really forced me to check in with myself and see what I'm good at, what I'm comfortable with, what I'm not comfortable with, and really push into that, push into the stuff that I struggle with. And so one of the biggest takeaways for me is that I think women are phenomenal entrepreneurs. I mean, if you look at the success rates of female started businesses versus males, females have higher rates of exit than men do. But we're not getting funded at the same levels, and I think we have to take ownership of that. I think we need to tackle the fundraising point and get stronger and better at that. And so I'm going to start some stuff in Boulder to help support, the Boulder female community. And actually, I want to open it up more broadly, no pun intended, because I think that there are a lot of people who do struggle with this, and it's not just females. So I have this difficult time where I do acknowledge that I think women have a difficult time, but I think it's...
Raising money specifically?
I think raising money, yeah I do. That's been, it's not been a challenge for me, but I've certainly noticed that that's the thing that I struggle with a little bit more. Like the minute I'm running the business, it's just no problem for me whatsoever. I'm just like, watch out, I can pivot, I can figure it out, I can pull the team together, I can do all of that stuff. But just going in and asking people for money. And I'm enjoying it now, I love it, I'm good at it now. But I definitely had to learn that, and I've been leaning on my male co-founders previously.
Do you think that it's because it's difficult to find angel investors or to find investment? I mean, you don't know where to go to actually see who might be interested in your idea? I mean, what's challenging about finding money? Is it asking for money?
I think different things present for different people. I think the female trait that I've recognized in myself, and I don't know if this, if there are other people who have felt the same thing, but I just want to do the work. There's a lot of other, you could call it bullshit, but it's not. There's a lot of other networking and selling yourself and keeping people updated, and it's not as transactional as you would think. It's a lot more about networks and the connections that you make. And I've been so used to, as a woman, just doing the work. I've always been the person who rolled the sleeves up, worked the longest, worked the hardest, got the clients, brought it in, and let the guys do all the charismatic networking, schmoozing, and all the rest of it, because that wasn't the real work. And you realize that actually that's just as important. And the networking and cultivating relationships and being front and center, speaking at events like this, I would way rather be on my computer right now. I appreciate that I'm on and I'm having fun and I enjoy seeing everyone. I like working. That's what I do, and that's what I want to be doing, but there is another side to it. And when I talk about the squiggly line, I say one of the most important things that you can do is get comfortable being uncomfortable. That the things that are difficult for you and that you don't enjoy as much, those are the pieces you have to focus on. The things that make you comfortable are actually often the busy work and the things that will distract you from the bits that will really move you forward. So I've been taking my own advice. I do it from time to time, and I've been, working on that.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any advice for people that are looking for money? I mean, from the perspective of how to start to build those networks? Because, I know that my husband and I, he has a probiotics company and same kind of thing, going through that process. And I think that when you first begin, you feel like you have to have everything finalized and
right.
the T's crossed and the I's dotted, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges. So where do you start?
Right. Well, I always love that saying that God laughs when you make plans. And I think it's the same thing with startups. When one of my other pieces for the squiggly line is that you have to maintain momentum, and momentum is actually often not the stuff that you think will, the things that you would think that might create momentum actually aren't always the things that do. And a big one for me is that things like, projections and business plans and KPIs and goal setting and all the rest of it, I think those things are just completely irrelevant for a startup. When you might not exist in 6 months, it doesn't really matter how good your projections are, they're wrong. Right. And frankly, even if you are still alive in 6 months, they're probably wrong. And we, in terms of advice, I did a great panel on Monday in Boulder for Boulder Startup Week. And so if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see some tweets of resources. There are some phenomenal resources we shared as a panel. And so I'd start there. The panel itself was fantastic and talked about a lot of the things to watch out for as you are going out and getting funding. But, I pushed back a lot on the panel because it was me and a lot of angel investors. And I said, look, we also have to appreciate that entrepreneurs don't have a lot of time. We're trying to juggle a million balls. And a lot of angel investors actually just want to sit down and tell you how they would run the business. And it's kind of a problem. And I've had a problem with it. And you're sitting in a meeting, in the first 5 minutes, you realize the person's asking all the wrong questions. Like, oh, great, I've got another 25 minutes of this when I could be actually going out and making some more contacts. So, there's experimentation, you get some right and some wrong, but, I think beware of trying to be over-prepared, beware of trying to dot too many I's and cross too many T's, because I think it's destructive, and I don't think it's momentum creating.
That makes a lot of sense. Do we have any questions for Claudia? If we open it up to the audience for a couple of questions? Denise, I know you had a question. I'm going to put you on the spot. Oh. You said, what was the revenue model for Broadli, right?
She's warned me about that
already. Okay.
If I told you, I'd have to kill you.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Actually, there's a good point on that, though, because it's a great question. And I think, again, from a female perspective, I think a lot more women create ventures that have a solid revenue model or business model behind them than guys do. And Broadli's been so fun for me because for the first time I've been like, I don't care. I know what I'm building. I know what I want to do. I care about audience. I care about connectivity. I care about engagement. I'll figure the revenue model out on the back end. But that said, just by embracing the path and letting the concept breathe and letting the product kind of move the way it needs to move or not, as the case may be, we've got some really awesome ideas. So I really am a proponent of coming into a startup or the creation of a new idea as open as you possibly can be. You want to make sure that every day you're moving things forward. But I think following a really rigid plan, I definitely know it works for some people, but it's not been my experience that's been the most helpful thing.
That makes sense.
So I actually briefly met you one day, and I realized when I met you that this relates to a problem that I have, and you just talked about revenue model. I missed a whole part that was really important in telling you the purpose of what I was trying to create. And my husband and I have this business. But so you're like, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you. How do you tell people who you're trying to get interested in your product for funding? How do you build that 5-minute statement to get them interested? Because I feel like every time I try to restate it, and I've clarified a lot over time, and I'm trying to be flexible and everything, but I keep missing something. And I finally got to it. I went to the office hours yesterday, and it was a 20-minute session, and we got to it in the last 5 minutes, and you could see his eyes, actually he was kind of dozing off. We got to the point where the point is, we're providing analytics for this product so that you can follow, and his eyes just opened up. But I've had months of problems of trying to translate that moment, that eye-catching moment. How do you get that, especially if this is a first-time venture?
Well, you got there. You have it. And that's how you get there. No, seriously. No, you get it wrong, and you get it wrong, and you get it wrong, and you get depressed, and you leave a meeting, and you're like, I completely screwed that up. Let's see, I knew I was going to do that. I'm getting so excited now.
And it's so funny that you say that, because I left crushed.
Yeah.
Crushed. I felt like I had a, 100-pound elephant or whatever, 1,000-pound elephant on me. And then the next day, I had that meeting, totally different story. But it's taken 6 months or longer to get to that point.
It can. I mean, look, there's no magic formulas. People will write about them. I always say people write about these magic formulas and they tell you how to do it, but I'm like, I don't believe it. Because you're creating something new. You're creating something that hasn't existed before. If you're not, go figure out how other people have described it and copy them. But if you're creating something new, it has to be from you. It has to be right for the business. I mean, there are a couple of rules. There are a couple of things people say. There's a great blog. I don't think it's Guy Kawasaki's, or maybe it is, where he goes through the, I don't know, is it 7, 9, 10, whatever steps, you know, slides that you should have for a pitch. There are some magic formulas, like you should bring the 3 things together. It's like this plus this, you know, with a little bit of that. You know, there's a whole lot of formulas out there, but you have to work the process. You have to go through it. You have to own it. I mean, I've been working with companies, and we actually keep zigging and zagging on that too. And you connect over here, and then it slides back, and then you create a connection point over here. So again, like, expect, this is our training. We get trained from babies to expect measured progressive steps forward. And when you step off of that, as you are contemplating into the squiggly line, it's not measured, it's not progressive, like you're probably not moving forward a lot of the time.
Right. We're always being flexible, but I feel like we're not moving fast enough. And I feel like everyone around me is saying, you're not moving fast enough. You're going to lose because you won't get into the game fast enough. So that's kind of been a stress point.
Well, maybe you're not. Seriously, I mean, I also believe in that. There are a lot of people out there. I mean, I know it sounds so, I'm from Boulder, so forgive me for being all woo-woo on you, but, you know, I think that there are angels out there who say things to us that are the messages that we need to hear if we're ready to hear them. And I also believe there's a critical factor of timing, you know, and your situation is different to everybody else's in this room, and I believe that when the time is right, you will get a sense of urgency like nothing you've ever felt before, and you will make certain decisions about that. And we're in the process on that with Broadli right now. You know, we were playing with it for half of last year. We launched, you know, magnificently at the beginning of this year. Then everything went wrong. Awesome, squiggly line, working the process. And we're rebuilding off of that, and now we're getting an impatience. We're getting a real impatience. And so, you know, I've said to my team, when I come back, I'm off to New Zealand again on Friday, but when I get back, I said June is all about figuring out the path for Broadli. You know, I'm feeling that urgency now. And you do have to move fast when you're ready, because somebody will come and eat your lunch. It's the law of the jungle, right?
Was there a question in the back of the room? Did I see somebody else have their hand? Go ahead.
So I have a startup I launched a month ago, and I'm just trying to figure out how to let everybody know about it.
Who's everybody?
Pretty much anybody that...
Anyone with money, right?
Well, yes, anyone that has a kid or knows a kid.
Parents.
Yeah.
Parents.
Yeah, look, the first thing I always say to people, again, going back to a Broadli philosophy, is use your trusted network. So the number one thing I say to anyone who's launching something new, well, after you've changed your LinkedIn profile to, you know, founder of, because then you immediately notify those people who care. But send a note to those people and ask them to send that note to 2 or 3 people saying, can you please come and, in order, do 1 or 3 or 10 of these things. Love you lots. I've got you back when you're doing the same thing, you know. And keep on them. You know, keep on them. Don't just send that out and think that that's everyone's homework and they'll get on it in their good time. Like, keep on them about it. Call people, meet as many people as you can. And, oh gosh, there was just one other thing that I wanted to say, which is slipping my mind right now. Again, so I'm a big book reader, and whatever I'm reading is like book of the month, so forgive me, but or book of the week or book of the day. But in The Intelligent Entrepreneur, there was one case study of a guy who would send weekly updates to anyone who came across who showed any interest in his business, which I thought was really smart. Just really short, pithy little bullet points of, hey, we got this many subscribers, we're doing this, we're doing that. And I'm a big fan of the regular update, because I think it keeps you in check, and it also keeps a point of connectivity with you and other people. And then beyond that, it's marketing. So you just have to be smart. Go and figure out a few brands who have done a really good job of it, who pay people a lot of money to do it for them, figure out what they did, and try and copy it best you can.
That's one of the biggest things that I've noticed from having a marketing background, that I talk to a lot of people about is the fact that you just want to look at what other brands are doing and follow what they're doing, copy what they're doing. I mean, subscribe to their email updates, follow their Twitter feeds.
Absolutely.
You know, look at what they did from a launch perspective, and maybe follow some of that.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, good. Anything else? Any other questions?
One right here.
Okay.
So I'm also a serial entrepreneur. I'm on my second venture right now. My first venture was horrible failure.
Yay!
Yeah, good.
Got that one done.
Really embarrassing. My second venture, actually, I started an LLC and representing a startup in Europe and basically scaling their business model in the United States. I'm faced with a decision right now. So the reason I joined this startup is because my first venture was a failure. I realized I needed to learn some skill sets I didn't have. I'm a former construction manager, so I learned as I went. Right now I'm faced with a decision. So we're going for a Series A. And so I feel like in terms of opportunity and the professional game, I really don't feel like I'm going to learn that much more. I think I've reached that maximum. And I feel like if I go out on my own now and I start something, that for me long term in terms of professional experience, like that's going to be a lot more valuable. But we are going for a Series A. And I also think that if I stay with this company and I go back to New York City, there could potentially be a lot more financial gain. So, I mean, if you were in my position, second venture, what do you think would be the better long-term values?
Right, so the first rule of the squiggly line is trust your instincts. And if you've learned enough and you've seen enough and you feel ready and you feel that angst about getting back in the game, I have to tell you to trust that because it's what I believe. The one counsel I will give you, though, is that we really romanticize what it is to be an entrepreneur. You know, you've experienced firsthand how a failure feels. That's the more likely result. So the more likely result is you could go and do that a couple more times quite happily, because that's the statistic. And there are a lot of, I believe in being as honest as I can be about the path and about the journey, because I think most people are not, or they couch it in these like terms of I failed, says, whoever who's just, exited, so owning a failure when you've just exited a big company is one thing, but actually being in the bowels of it is pretty traumatic, and it happens more often than not. So, I think you have to weigh that. I think you have to be smart about the risk that you're about to take. But, you're probably a badass if you came from the construction business. So, I would just own that and go do what you want to do and do it gloriously. I met this other woman recently who was in the construction business, and she's tough. I'm like, I want to be like her. So, I have big snaps, because you're in a world that's not a typical world for a female to venture into, right? So you've learned a lot already. You probably know as much as you need to know. Trust your gut.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is just
confidence. Yeah.
The next book you might consider is called The Confidence Code. Have you seen that one yet? So it talks.
Oh yeah, everyone's talking about that right now.
It's pretty good. It's interesting. It talks a lot about women specifically and some of the voices that we have in our head.
Yeah.
And to your point, you were talking about how you left your conversation with Claudia, and it kept haunting you, the next time, and that sometimes men tend to have a better opportunity to just let that go and move forward and not be as comfortable. They're more comfortable trusting their instincts than women are.
Well, women have better instincts, I think, than men do, is the first thing I would say. I'm just going to say it. You all can hate me. I don't care. I do care a little bit. Look, here's the deal. I have a lack of confidence a lot of times. I have shitty days still. It's not like I've got it all figured out. In fact, if I had it all figured out, I think it'd be really, really boring. Broadli is as squiggly, if not more squiggly, than my prior companies. I'm working with this other company, and it's like a disaster day after day after day, but I'm determined, and I want to do this, and it's like stupid that I am, but I believe in it, and I believe in what we're doing, and I want to change the world a little bit, so I'm going to keep doing it. We think that we should have this robustness, and we think that the little voice in our head shouldn't exist. And the first day at my law firm, the supervising partner said, now I'm going to tell you all about imposter syndrome. you're going to experience this a lot. It's that feeling when you're sitting in a room that you're like, oh my God, everybody knows so much more than I do, and I really hope they don't find out right now that I'm a complete phony and I
Especially
shouldn't
in a
be
courtroom,
here.
right? I would
Yeah,
assume,
well,
right? Or
the best example I had, and if this helps at all, I'll share it, is I was like in my 3rd year at the law firm, and I've been given this big contract that I had to negotiate. I was on my own. You know, I rocked into the negotiation with my client, sat across the room, went through the document, you know, point by point, got to this point, and the client on the other side of the room had a fit. Started screaming, started yelling. I'm pretty sure he got up at one point, started stomping around, raving. And I sat there kind of frozen because I had no idea what his issue was. I literally couldn't figure out what he was talking about, what his problem was, or how I could say anything. So I just shut up and I just sat there quietly. Well, he eventually calmed down, sat down, clearly was completely embarrassed that he'd done that, and then I won every single point in that negotiation from there on in. So I think, you know, sometimes I think, you know, we think confidence looks a certain way, and I think you just got to be who you are. You know, one of my favorite things to say is just be the biggest, bravest, boldest version of yourself that you can be, and just know that that's enough, and pursue your path. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's how I get up in the morning.
all right, one more. Anything else? Last one.
How old are you?
How old do you think?
Is that allowed? I guess 38. I'm gonna put him under the heat. He gets like early 40s.
I'm 40 this year.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so what?
440.
Oh yeah.
What advice would you give yourself a decade ago?
Huh. To just believe in myself. I mean, it's kind of the same point. To just absolutely believe in myself and stand up for myself when I needed to. Because I think, again, the confidence thing. I think we can diminish ourselves significantly by making up crap in our heads that actually doesn't exist. So I think that's the advice I'd give. And to, you know, keep taking care of yourself. I think it's really important, especially as women. I think we try and take care of everybody else before ourselves, so see other people say.
How do you do that right now? Because I know you're traveling the country, and I mean, really, like, what does Claudia do to take care of herself? I mean, what?
It's tough when you're traveling a lot. I eat super, super healthy, and I try not to drink very often. My rule is if somebody opens a really good bottle of wine, then I'll have a glass, but it basically makes me sound like a snob, but it's more about, try not to have that glass of wine when you're on the plane, because it usually crashes you out. But look, I'm going to own it. You know, I have acupuncture, I work out a lot, I eat really, really well, I'm careful with what, I'm kind of, I'm a saint, basically. So not a saint.
Excellent.
But I was just seeing my acupuncturist yesterday, and she's like, "Oh, dude, you're like, this is not good. You're not. And I was like, "I know. I've been 2 weeks on the road. I'm exhausted. My anxiety's up to here, and I'm here. Fix me." And she did, and I'm great today. So yay, acupuncture. I know, bolder, right? Yeah.
It works for you, right? I mean, that's what.
Well, it works for you. That's exactly the point.
Yeah.
Exactly the point. And dress well.
I know. Well,
I
figured that one.
I feel like people think that dressing is this like monotonous, boring thing that you have to do every morning. Because if you turned up in your pajamas, it might be frowned upon. But like, have fun. Just have fun. No, wear your parrot pants and your blue shoes and like. Have a little bit of fun with yourself.
That's important. That's interesting because I've worked from home for the last 3 years, right? And so there's times where I don't get out of my pajamas.
Yeah.
And getting dressed and coming and doing this type of a thing really it helps with my confidence and my self, everything.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think that's huge.
Yeah. No, if you feel fabulous, you put fabulous out, and we're like magnets, and we attract.
Yeah.
So and you're better. When you're feeling good, you present better. You
Absolutely.
speak. I think you speak more clearly. I think you attract people, and we're all human beings. I think sometimes we forget that this is not a game. This is interpersonal relationships. This is how business is done. Sales is not like convincing. I said something the other day. I was like, it's not. People seem to think that sales is manipulating other people into thinking that they want to do something. But I'm like, that sounds really, really hard. Why not just kind of go in and see where they're trying to get to and figure out a way that you can help them get there and both win? You know, manipulation just seems like way too much hard work. Let's just create fun, trusted relationships and go blow shit up.
So to put you on the spot as a final thing, we talked about doing a little Broadli sort of, you know, networking opportunity. What should we do? Should we ask people to...
How many people, yeah, we can do this. So what we want to do is break into groups of no more than, I would say, 7. And better that you break into a group of people you don't know. I know it's always so awkward and you feel like, why am I doing this? But if you're sitting with somebody you know, they're already able to help you. So I would say, like, take literally 2 minutes, grab yourselves into clusters of 5 to 7, and then we're going to do something really fun.
Let's do it.
I can see everyone moving. Look, can you see how everyone's getting up really quickly, running around?